going on, silencers, and welcome back to my still unnamed podcast. I need you to get down in the comments below and help me figure out what to call this thing. I was thinking about secrets and silence, or I don't know, something like that, something to do with silence. As we know, I am one of the least silent things on this planet. I am very opinionated, but the irony is too good to pass up. So if you do enjoy the content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. And thank you very much to my patrons for your ever present support. For information on how to submit questions, stay tuned to the end. Now, this podcast is set up as a free Q&A. You can ask me things from political to personal and anything in between. My policy is to always answer direct questions, and if you have the balls to ask the question, you have the responsibility to stomach the answer. So if those terms are acceptable, without any further ado, let's get into today's question. This question, also submitted by Clueless God 97 on my Discord, involves human history. They say that we have been anatomically the same for almost 800,000 years, the new estimate of when Homo sapiens and Neanderthals split from a common ancestor. What are your thoughts on ancient civilizations and the potential that cataclysmic events have happened throughout our history, possibly resetting and destroying what was done before? The most recent being the Younger Dryas period, and especially the end of the Younger Dryas period, which was between 11 and 13,000 years ago. So, this is an absolutely fascinating topic. So, recently there was taking creationism aside, that the world is what, 8,000 years old, 7,000 years old, whatever. I'm not getting into religion on this one. That's a question for another time. Evolution states that, we are old. The earth is several billion years old at this point, and we've been evolving the entire time. It's just we started off as a single cell, which some people only maintain that single brain cell. You know who you are. Actually, you probably have no idea. Never mind, scratch that. We started off as single cells. We worked our way up through all different kinds of life, and eventually that led us to mammalia, um, which would turn into primate, Neanderthal, things like that. There would be not divergent evolution, not exactly convergent evolution either, but we'd basically appear. Oof. Now, 800,000 years ago is fairly accurate. Obviously, you can get into semantics with some scientists. They'll say it's closer to like 790,000 years ago, but goddamn, dude, we're not all rocket scientists. Apparently, you aren't either. But um, the most recent proof that we have of human beings is 310,000 old, 310,000 years old. In the Himalayas, they discovered handprints and footprints of adolescents in a concrete-like stone, and they were able to date them, radiometrically date them to 310,000 years ago. So, holy crap, pretty old, right? Now, the question involved if there could be cataclysmic events and ancient civilizations. Everybody's heard of Atlantis and how it sank the sea. By the way, they found Atlantis, so you know. Not anywhere near an ocean now. But cataclysmic event caused it to fall into the sea. Obviously, that's more or less true. We've seen in the Mediterranean specifically, there's a shit ton of cities that are more or less crumbling into the sea, Mediterranean. We see it all over the coast of Africa, that there are settlements and things like that that were once on cliff sides that would fall into the ocean. Now, this is natural erosion and mass wasting and things like that. But getting back on topic, hopefully, I believe that human history has merely repeated itself. Think about it. It took less time to go from flight to the moon than it did to go from cassettes to digital audio. Okay. Seriously? From Kitty Hawk's first flight to the moon took less than 100 years, if I'm remembering correctly. Seriously. Like, how amazing is that? We went from paper mache and wood, balsa wood for Pete's sake, to aluminum cans and pressurized air tanks and month-long journeys to and from our closest satellite. Are you serious? How amazing is that? And we've only scratched the surface of what we're capable of at this point. They're trying to find a cure for cancer. They've already found it, but I digress. It's not profitable. They're trying to figure out particle acceleration. Okay. They're trying fusion. Okay. How many times could something like that have happened? And maybe there was a horrible mistake, and particle acceleration is what bathed the earth in fire. Or how likely is it that billions of people just disappeared in an instant? Actually, pretty likely. We've seen diseases, most recently with the COVID-19 epidemic, which, by the way, it was not an epidemic, it was just a pandemic. Um, there's a semantic distinction there, but I digress. Lots of people die. Lots of people die all at once. The human body, in the right conditions, can break down completely, bones and all, in about 7 weeks. Again, in the right conditions. It has to be kind of swampy, it has to be hot, it has to be humid, and you have to have the right insects and animals nearby. But they can break down almost completely, except for fragments, in just a couple of weeks. I'm sure some of you by now have seen those what ifs of New York. What if New York just stopped? How long would it take for the concrete jungle to fall down? Wouldn't take that long. In less than 10 years, most of New York would crumble. Because even decay will eventually reach uh, untarnishable metals. Granted, there's things like gold and stuff, those won't. Those will still break down, they'll erode. So, in the event that human civilization was wiped out in 250 to 1,000 years, you would never know it. You'd never see anything left behind. How cool is that? And then how scary is it? How scary is the thought that everything that we're doing right now, if it stopped in 250 years, the next monkey to pick up a rock, bash another monkey over the head would never know it. Ever. Wouldn't know about the previous great white apes and black apes and yellow apes and whatever color you want to call yourself. The big apes, the big hairless apes, know all of the technological advances that we did. But over the course of 10,000, 100,000, 300,000 years, they make the same mistakes or they survive. And they're not the ones to be having this conversation before the world ends. How terrifying and cool at the same time, right? So I think it is very likely that we have been through this a couple of times, at least. I do believe that there is a point where you got to draw a hard line. For instance, I don't think that humans walked with too many dinosaurs. There might have been some around, a million years ago, some left. And granted, I know crocodiles, alligators, shut up. Not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like Triceratops or Pachycephalosaurus or, the good ones, the amazing ones. We never walked with dinosaurs, not like that, other than your freaking chicken in your backyard. Yeah, the next time you look at a chicken, realize that it has scales, not skin. And it really does. If you look at its skin under a microscope, chickens have scales. Anyway, I digress. There is a line to be drawn, but I think in that 800,000 years at least, we've done this over and over again. It's entirely possible that Neanderthals did this, and that's where they disappeared to. They survived long enough because we got to this technological advancement. And maybe they weren't naturally as smart as us, but I know people who kind of look and sound like me. And if sense was gunpowder, they wouldn't have enough to blow their nose. So, not exactly an argument for intelligence, species to species. I know dogs that are smarter than people. Um, so yeah, I think over and over again we have failed as a civilization and completely died off. Completely. And we are just what is currently calling ourselves Homo sapien right now. Now, in case any of you are wondering, I'm not just saying, I believe this, take my word for it. I have a couple of bits of proof or things that make me think it is so. The first being things like the Baghdad battery. And for those of you who don't know, the Baghdad battery is a clay jar with a copper and lead insert into it that holds some kind of acid, probably a strong vinegar, and it actually produces enough juice to charge your phone. That's right. It is an ancient battery found in Baghdad, hence the name, that could charge your phone off of vinegar. How cool is that? Also, stories of Atlantis, granted, they're stories, they're passed on through generations of mariners and things like that. And we know how people can embellish things. I do it all the fucking time because I have no idea why. I just do. It said that they had advanced medicines, energy driven medicine, and they had vehicles that could fly. How many thousands and tens of thousands of years before the Wright brothers decided they were going to do a little science project on the weekend and hey, it took off? I think that is totally feasible, totally possible. Machu Picchu, down in South America, has a stone on it that actually gives off electricity. Now, granted, there are lots of theories behind it. It's really high, it's iron rich, it's just getting atmospheric energy. All of that is fine and dandy. And even if all of that is true, that is a center point of a grand complex in South America. So somebody knew it was special. Even if it's just tingly, they still knew enough to know that it was special. Things like that make me think that we're not discovering things. We're just rediscovering things. So yeah, I think human history is a little more convoluted than we give it credit for. But I do hope that that answers your question. Thanks again, Clueless God 97, for submitting this one. If you do want to submit a question of your own, you can join my Discord. There's a link in my bio. You can send me an email at controlaltsilent@gmail.com, spelled just like the channel name, or you can send me a DM on Twitter. Again, at controlaltsilent, spelled just like the channel name. Let me know when you submit a question if you do wish to remain anonymous. Otherwise, I'll give you a shout out for asking an amazing question. There's no such thing as a stupid answer, and there's no such thing as a stupid question. Even a wrong answer teaches you something. So I thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next one.